Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is CM Alexander with the news. A winner has been selected in our Decorate Derry contest. Duma Edgar Fremantle has given us the newest piece to adorn our studio. Allow me to describe it to you. Capturing the final moments of daylight over a desolate, wind-swept beach. The sun hovers just above the horizon, its fiery red and orange rays bleeding into the sky. On the shore, a solitary figure stands at the water's edge. They appear motionless, as if frozen in a moment of dread, their posture hinting at an unspeakable terror awaiting them just beyond the horizon. So cute! We love it. It's perfect. You're listening to Derry Public Radio. This is Derry Public Radio.
Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King Book Club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Kahn, alongside CM Alexander.
Hello, everyone.
And Benjamin Graham.
Hey, constant readers.
And today we are back with our Patreon selection series with a Patreon selection from Jason Keene. It is Duma, and we are reading through Chapter 8 with CM leading our discussion. CM, take it away.
Thanks, Josh. First, have either of you read this or listened to it before?
Nope.
I had listened to the audiobook years ago. I was working a data entry job where we could use headphones. And so I alternated between audiobooks and watching the entire run of Mad Men while I worked. And I did already own this on Audible. So I didn't have to spend
Nice.
my monthly credit. I do not remember a single thing about it, though.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
remembered liking it. And I was right.
Okay, so
Spoilers.
as we're going through it, are you remembering things or is it stuff you just didn't remember?
I remember being really drawn to Big Pink.
Aren't we all
thinking
then?
It's such a cool take on the haunted house where it's this giant pink eyesore on an abandoned
cliff.
island. That we begin the book with, this house will fall into the ocean.
100%.
I remember thinking that's really cool.
Yeah.
It's my favorite part of the book is him living in this house that he's like, I don't know, it'll collapse eventually. Probably won't concern us in the run of this book, right?
I'm just renting.
We'll get to the house. Well, we open with our protagonist, Edgar Fremantle, telling us very briefly about a little girl, which was a very unexpected way to start this.
It's funny because sometimes we get the unconnected yet connected by theme Stephen King story. I didn't realize that this person would be in the story.
Yeah.
Until
the
way
end,
later than it should have.
Right.
If it's me, anyway.
Yeah.
Right, which is stupid because that first section even ends with, I love her even despite all she cost me.
Yep,
But again, I still thought that meant like metaphorically, like what.
It's nice though
so
to have to
crazy.
work to get there sometimes.
Yeah.
And so what happened with this little girl is that she fell from a carriage and she hit her head on a rock. And at this point, we know that she was able to rebuild her world through drawing. And then we begin Chapter 1, My Other Life, which I love this theme of My Other Life.
Yeah.
Because I just made a life thing change. And
sure.
I started using that and it just made me feel better. It was like gave me words for this thing. I felt we get an idea here of what that other life was. We also find out that Edgar is telling us this story 4 years into the future during what is his third life.
Very interested by that.
Don't know anything about what that means
No
yet.
fucking clue yet.
We find out that Edgar is married to Pam. They have 2 daughters, Melinda and Ilsa.
It doesn't
Elsie.
matter.
Ilse.
At least for this reading.
Ilse. I'll say Ilse because I think that's what the audiobook.
Yeah, the good one and the other one.
Oh. And he owns his own contracting business. They're pretty well off. They're worth $40 million.
Not bad.
And we quickly find out that a crane smashed into his truck as he was driving it. He lost his right arm, his right hip was crushed or shattered, I should say. I guess shattered's not as bad as crushed. I don't know.
It's both pretty bad.
His skull was fractured in several places, and he lost 70% of the vision in his right eye. So let's talk about where we really get to meet him. This is just sort of the info dump of his other life. And let's talk about his recovery, where we meet Edgar. I was thinking about Paul.
The suffering of the rehab, for sure.
Mhm.
I thought until we get the flashback, because of the way it's phrased, that he drove his truck into a crane and not what actually happens. Did anybody else misread that until it's revealed?
No, I hadn't really pictured it yet.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it too much. It's just, you're learning that it's reading about the aftermath
Was
is like
distracting,
whatever
yeah.
happened, it was bad.
Yeah, that's all I was thinking about.
Because he cannot walk, obviously, but he also can't speak. He has the words in his head, but he cannot connect them to his mouth. And that sounds so terrifying.
Yeah.
It's like being an infant again. You don't have the ability yet. You haven't developed that in your brain to move things, out of your short-term memory, through that process so that you retain that information. And he has to rebuild those connections. It's really well described to us.
I have worked professionally with a number of people with traumatic brain injuries, and it has always been one of the things. It's like one of the scariest things about a human being is our brains are so fragile, and that something could happen that just disconnects your ability to communicate.
Kind of makes you not you, which I think is sort of the primary thing that Edgar is going through right now. Or maybe I should say Pam is going through right now.
Yes.
The relationship. So, all right, this is, I'm going to get a little bit ahead in
That's
this.
fine. How can you not?
Yeah.
So at a certain point when Pam asks for a divorce, she says, "You choked me. You don't remember, but you did." And from that point, I had this idea in my head that choking happened pre-accident,
Oh.
Interesting.
which is why she says so factfully, like so matter of fact, I know you don't remember. And that why she was ready to be free of him. So she was scared of him, obviously, the way he was lashing out.
He's
He was
really
full of
angry
anger at that
and
time,
confused.
which is completely understandable.
Yeah, it kind of changed his personality.
Yeah, and the people around even talk shit about Pam for leaving him in that time, which you can't know the weight of that.
I wasn't judgmental of her, but I also was like, yeah, I see why they feel that way. That's a hard situation.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for clues that Edgar was kind of a piece of shit before the accident.
Interesting.
But then later he recalls the choking scene, and I was like, okay, maybe that's not it. So I had a weird relationship with this beginning half because I was looking for something that probably isn't there.
Oh yeah, no, he is not a Jack Torrance character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is,
Seems like a fine guy. Honestly, at this
right?
point,
other
so
than
far.
this rage problem that he develops after his accident, again, completely reasonably, and through his physical therapy and speech therapy and stuff, his therapist, this might be jumping ahead a little bit, but it's going forward. Like I said, I don't remember what happens, but this thing is central to my theory of what's going to happen.
Okay.
Gives him a doll.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
Xander came in, his therapist, like his psychiatrist
Xander.
or psychologist. Yeah.
Gives him a doll that he says looks like Lucille Ball,
Yeah.
but he names it Reba. And I believe, unless I missed something, he says that it's named after an aunt or someone or an old babysitter that was mean to him.
That they have she has the same name as that aunt. That's not who she's named after.
She's named
okay.
after Reba McEntire.
Okay.
It's one of his lateral connections that helps him remember the name.
Okay. I mixed that up. I was like...
He also uses it before he tells us that's a method he uses. So I can see why that...
Josh, real quick, can you explain the lateral connections?
Oh, he realizes that at a certain point he can't come up with the word chair, but if he thinks around what are other things that are similar to chairs, other things maybe you sit on, maybe that's the the connection he's made. It lets him take a breath and make the connection finally.
It's funny because I'm teaching child development right now, and it's like all the things he's doing are things that our brains do, and like ways we can like teach and train children and support their memory and stuff. That's awesome. It's fun to read about that. We should mention, Ben, you started talking about Cayman gave him this doll, and the doll, he's like, this is like proven not to be effective therapeutic practices. It's against my better judgment, but I think the situation calls for something else. And just try it out. Here's this anger doll, and basically like focus on this. And when you're upset, because his outbursts are when he can't recall that word. He just gets angry, and his anger at this point is uncontrollable. And he stabbed Pam with a knife. It's a plastic knife.
Yes.
He makes sure to point out she needed like one stitch.
It is an important distinction. If I stabbed somebody with a plastic knife, I'd want people to know it was a plastic knife.
I mean, the intention, I think, is to stab. So, but anyway, so that we've met Reba. And we get a flashback, actually, to the accident itself, which Ben and I had forgotten about.
Oh, God.
When he forgets her name, and we see him use her then to make that connection. Would one of you like to explain that tie-in?
I'm sorry. I was just thinking about the accident. The part where we find out that his arm splits open. Is that this?
What's playing on the radio?
Oh, yeah. We find out is Fancy by Reba McEntire.
Yeah.
Yeah, the accident is described rough.
It's so scary because he's just in his, Ram or something?
Yeah.
And a truck on one of his construction sites just starts backing up. And
a crane.
Yeah.
A 12-story crane.
Yeah, well, that's like a big truck.
Really
Listen,
big truck.
I work with small children.
So
anything with four
machinery.
wheels is a truck.
And its beeper was broken.
Yeah. He doesn't hear it coming until it's too late, and it just slowly crumples his truck around him, and he can feel his arms split open and his ribs break under the pressure. It's
hard to read.
Rough stuff.
So 2 months after these events, Josh, you'd mentioned, Pam asks for a divorce, and Edgar's accountant, Tom Riley, who I didn't realize we'd hear from again, helps him move into their lake house, temporarily, and gets pretty emotional about the whole situation. He doesn't.
Yeah, what a good friend.
Yeah, he's like, man,
we should all have a friend like Tom.
Yeah, you don't give up the house. Like, he's his accountant, so he, knows their finances.
Something else that I thought I was going to be annoyed by, but because of the brain injury, it's worked out well, is that repetition of things and how many times it comes back to whenever he thinks of Tom, he thinks of that phrase, never give up home field advantage. And then all the wireman sayings.
Yeah, I like it.
I know we'll get there, but by the time we got to wireman, I was afraid I was going to hate him because of all this thing. And I fucking think it's great.
Fucking rules.
Okay, this is an example of how subjective everything we do is, but how much we love King, because we, think about Lisey's story, for example, there's that language and it just felt like, I think the problem is it felt too intimate. This feels like anything, any phrase any of us could say. And so you get those different aspects of King using that. And this is a way that I personally enjoy reading.
We'll get to Wireman. I want to talk about him a lot. But yeah, his Kingisms are less annoying than other characters that we've read about, and he feels less like a what the hell? Why is this person talking like that? And more like just a real guy you'd meet who talks kind of weird.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, that guy's fun and
Yeah.
smart
Yes.
and like clever. I like him.
Do you have a crush on Wireman?
No, shut up. Why was he asking about me?
Nowhere. Oh, so his physical therapist, as you guys were mentioning, Kathy Green was like,
What is it, Kathy Green, the therapy queen? Or no, it's like a
the
what
physical
was it?
torture machine or
Yeah,
something.
something.
Something
It's-
like fun, but kind of that expresses how painful she is
Yes.
to be around.
She pushes him.
Yeah, which is what he needs.
wants it.
Physical therapy is
Mhm.
great. But she has some pretty harsh words to say about Pam. She thinks it's bullshit. She's like, none of this is your fault.
Mhm.
And we get this a little earlier when he's talking about Pam, but he alludes to the fact that it wasn't just the accident changing him and her being afraid of him and him being maimed, which he'll later say, he's maimed and that's part of it. It sounds like maybe this was maybe she was already kind of in a place and this happened and she's like, now I have nothing to keep me in this relationship because you're not even you anymore.
Yeah.
Edgar starts to, around this time, contemplate killing himself. And fortunately for him, Kathy recognizes the signs of that and tells Cayman.
That's interesting. Something just dawned on me because we're talking that he has these he's showing the signs.
Mhm.
And when Cayman does come out to talk to him, he dismisses those claims. And she says, like, yeah, what could Kathy possibly know? It's just not like she's seen hundreds of people
Mhm.
through this exact hell, all this.
Your situation is not unique.
Exactly. And I was more dismissive of her being her rant about Pam sucking. And now I'm like, I think that holds just as much weight as her because she's seen time after time relationship, like how it's affected all these lives. All right, I'm on board.
Yeah?
Kathy gets it.
I
Pam
like-
sucks.
Good, yeah.
I like this scene because he is in the lead up to Cayman coming over. He's like thinking about it and he's like, I would have to make sure that it looked really good, like an accident, so it wouldn't hurt my children.
Or
I have
Pam.
to, or Pam, and I really, really have to make sure that
They get the insurance
that no
money.
one knows.
Yes.
And then Cayman comes over and says like, so you're gonna kill yourself? And he's like, but what?
Well, in this
No.
this approach becomes important later
It
in a
does.
cool way that I thought was interesting. Do you guys want to say anything else about Cayman's visit?
He
His
says to go away.
Well, his advice is
Well, not so
God,
much.
wow,
He doesn't have the best bedside
hands,
manner.
He hands him a knife. He says, wait at least a year. Because he's like, no
Yep.
matter how
No
good you
one will
make it
believe it.
look, the insurance companies are going to be asking, you're going to hurt them. It's not, everybody's going to know. And suggests what we don't typically suggest for people. And I like Edgar talks about this because it's an AA thing, that you should not do a geographic cure because an asshole gets on a plane in Iowa and an asshole gets off a plane in Florida. So it's not going to solve your problems. But once again, Cayman is using a technique that goes against his better judgment because the situation seems unique, which I didn't really think about until later on when other things happen with Edgar, even before he gets to Big Pink, that like maybe that's just part of something special about him that Cayman's compelled to use these alternate methods. Anyway, so Edgar decides to take Cayman's advice and he's going to move to Duma, Florida. But before that happens, he has a strange experience with the neighbor's dog that I couldn't deal with getting through more than one time. And it was worse than the cow in Full Dark, No Stars.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it talks about the dog screaming and I can't. Someone else talk about it.
It's Edgar is going for a walk. So he's taking a walk around his neighborhood and he just so happens to see a girl in a Girl Scout uniform going door to door selling cookies. And as he's reaching home, he sees this lady who is always driving too fast through the neighborhood on her phone, driving too fast through the neighborhood on her phone, and hit the little girl's dog in front of her. And it's awful. The dog is screaming. The little girl is right there when it goes over and like describes the aftermath.
Oh.
It is.
The dog is dying slowly and painfully, and it's described.
It's entire, like, from its whole back half is crushed.
Yeah. And Edgar's like, he's dying too slowly, if possible.
Yeah.
And so he sends the girl and her mother inside. And as he is crouched behind this big Hummer that hit the dog, and the woman that hit the dog is on the side of the road throwing up, it's hard to tell because it is described.
It's described very
You
strange,
just know he kind of phases out. Like he kind of grays out or reds out. It's red.
Yes.
He keeps saying. And when he comes to, he is clutching the dog to his chest. And it's staring up into his face, which is too much. And there's another guy in the neighborhood who's like, that dog's dead. You can put it down now. And he does. But that night when he goes home and is showering and eating nearly raw hamburger.
Because he's really hungry after helping this dog move on.
Yeah, which is upsetting.
Fucking weird.
Yeah.
He can, in his memory, he remembers clutching the dog to his chest with his left arm and choking it with his right arm.
Right, yeah.
But he is missing.
Which he does not have.
Well, it's because he said, like, basically says, I'm going to choke this dog to death to put it out of its misery, and leaves it at that before it even dawns on him. I was holding it, and I can only hold it with one arm. So how he doesn't even understand like how he did it.
Yeah,
in a way.
The weird digression about his bones grinding together as he's choking this dog. Don't like it.
No.
Don't like it.
And I'm a softie anyway. Like, I got emotional over a June bug that died in front of me outside today. I tried to help
adorable,
it.
CM.
I picked it up and put it in the grass. So it didn't have to die on the pavement. Anyway, it's been a rough day. So here we jump back to the little girl that we opened with, who I had forgotten about, the one with the head injury. And what we get of who she is and what's happening is kind of, I felt like this point, disorienting, but I thought it was really intriguing. And I like this popping back to her and then present day with Edgar, because when we go to her, it's not a lot. It's like a paragraph, or maybe it's like a moment playing out over the course of several paragraphs.
This fucked me up, though, emotionally.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little girl, though her first word being daddy after her traumatic, it's the first word that she figures how to cross-connect into her life, because every time she wants to say her dad's name, she says bird or erd, and then has to figure out a way to, I think it was something like, makes her think of his first name, and by thinking about trying to say his first name, she says daddy.
Yeah, it's like all this stuff she has to go through to get that word. And it makes her angry and upset when she can't.
Because the housekeeper doesn't really understand her. Her two older sisters are mean. The two meanies. And the twins are just little.
It's written in such a
innocent, childlike way,
and like stream of conscious way. It's very effective.
Edgar moves to Duma to a place that he names, Ben, as you said, Big Pink, and it's in Salmon Point, which is at the south end of this island.
Big Pink is so much better than Salmon.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's plenty of houses that people rent for vacation along this strip of beach, but the only other full-time resident that we will come to know shortly in this place is, this woman and this guy who are nearby. And so it's not really a busy, tourists aren't out there right now. And it's a really nice start to his geographic recovery.
It felt very Joyland.
Yeah.
Yes. 1,000%.
I think I was telling you the other day, Josh, like this book reminds me of Joyland, reminds me of Bag of Bones, like anything that happens near the ocean, I guess, except for the Dark Tower series. That didn't give me any of these vibes, but so it's making me wonder, like, is this going to be a love story of sorts in some way?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Between Edgar and Wireman. Yep.
We also meet Jack Cantori, who's Edgar's real estate agent's hired help to he's a guy who lives down there, and he's like kind of like a maintenance guy, or like he'll run errands for him. Just whatever he needs, helps him with groceries. And I really liked their conversation about how Big Pink looks like it's going to collapse over the Gulf someday. All just very casual, like explaining the erosion of this island, and I'm like, I'd be too anxious to sleep there.
Right?
I would be like, oh no, I gotta go.
At one
what
point,
if
he's
that's
like,
tonight? What if that happens tonight?
"Don't worry, you'll hear it before it goes."
Not good enough.
And then a few chapters
I'll know I'm
later,
gonna die.
he's painting, and he's like, "If the house could be on fire, and I would never know." And I'm like, "Dude, you're gonna fall in the ocean."
So something interesting happens to Edgar his first day at Big Pink.
Our first painting, or our first drawing, the Florida room, which is the view that was on the brochure that showed the horizon, all this. It's a Florida ceiling windows. He calls it Little Pink. That's his room for it. He sees this sunset, and there's a boat going by, and he just feels compelled. His right arm gets itchy. That phantom limb itch, and he starts drawing and draws a kind of creepy sunset for a reason he can't quite explain.
And he names it Hello. I don't know if that matters.
I think
but I wrote it down.
Awesome.
It's like the house is talking to him, is what I assume.
Because he explicitly says his drawings had always been amateur. She'd never made art. He'd always doodled, it was like and sketched.
Yeah, not serious hobby.
Right. And he feels that compulsion to name it, to give it that name.
And after he names it Hello, which if we're thinking of Big Pink saying hello to him, he thinks that it seems like the house has been waiting for him. And in any other book, that would be like super sweet, but because it's Stephen King, it's not a very comforting thought to me. I'm a little concerned. Like, I don't feel like there's an outright evil, but I feel like there's a chaos here that doesn't know what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Could it be that the reason that Big Pink does not feel evil because it's a big pink tropical house?
Yeah, absolutely.
The Marston
it's
house.
It's like a Barbie house on the beach.
Exactly.
Like, it's not evil.
It sounds so, it looks so like idyllic. You know,
I thought about the Marston house too.
Absolutely. Where like there's something bad here, but look how nice it looks on the Zillow.
I imagine the Marston house is like all these shades of like blue and black and gray. Am I being really gendered about these houses?
I just thought about Zillow in a Stephen King universe. Like, going to book Big Pink, and it just has Tom's bullet hole ghost at the top of the stairs.
Okay, we should write fake listings for Stephen King houses on Zillow and just read them on a bonus episode.
That's a fun bonus episode. I like that a lot.
Okay, listeners, I'm not cutting this so that you have to hold us to it.
Did it make you feel any sense of comfort that immediately after this he eats nasty?
I always love when people eat nasty. Not nasty like raw hamburger.
No,
though.
not that kind of nasty.
Comfort
but
food.
he's like
nasty.
Because he thinks about calling Ilse before he sits down to draw, but then gets swept up in this, and then he's ravenous again when he comes out of this state.
But that night, she calls him his favorite daughter. I'm just going to say it. Because it seems like the other one might be a jerk. Yeah. Like her mom.
He's honest. He's honest with himself.
Seems like the one daughter's like the mom, maybe more, and the other one's like him. And those, they're just closer. She's worried about him. And he sounds kind of strange because he's just like come out of this like state of drawing. And she's asking about his pain medication. He's like, actually, I think I'm weaning off of them because I forgot to take my dose, my most recent dose, and I feel pretty good actually.
But that's probably just the geographic change, the humidity, it's the pressure,
air.
It's something, yeah.
We can kind of go through these next parts a little quickly. I want to briefly summarize a few things that we discover, and then if you guys want to stop and pay more attention to something, just let me know.
Sure.
Edgar starts taking walks on the beach to get his strength back, and he notices how isolated it is. And the next time he sees Jack kind of gives him a little insight into why that is. He's like, oh, well, this this is owned by one person. And it's this huge, like crazy, we find out this legal battle and nobody really knows who owns the rest of these pieces of land.
Again, by the time we get to the end of this part of the reading, it's like right at the end of this part of the reading, we get the answer to that. But until I was going through my notes, I'd completely forgot that Jack offers to, you want me to do some more research into that? Get you some? Yeah. And he's like, don't worry about it.
I'll paint it.
All right.
Ilsa calls and wants to plan a visit, and she has special news to share with Edgar when she comes. And after this call, his arm starts to itch again, and he feels compelled to go to Little Pink. And he does some art. So let's talk about the two pieces that come after this phone call from Ilse.
So this is the... Most of the other drawings, there's the phantom limb touching something connection. Mm-hmm. This beginning is where we get... a bonus piece of art that seeps through in his connection, I think because he's not connected to something. But we'll explore that idea later. He starts drawing a person. And again, he's not really drawn people much. Mm-hmm. He's drawn buildings. That's the most of his experience. And the problem isn't that he's compelled to draw this person, but it's the amount of details he feels he has to add. The number on the shirt, the school book, the boots. And it's just this guy, and he says that he knows this guy has a ring in his pocket, knows he bought it from Zales. And so he writes Zales on the piece of art. And then he's not done, and he draws a scary red lady in a cloak. Mm-hmm. I'm a little scared about that one.
Nah, it's fine.
I didn't know, like, we find out this is Ilsa's fiance when she comes to visit shortly after that.
And he knows it immediately.
Yeah,
it's like, that's the big news.
I thought the woman, because he's this super Christian guy in a Christian rock band that travels. And
so cool.
I assume that this is the woman he's going to cheat on Ilse with. And that's because he's not because I don't think he's afraid of these pictures, but there's something wrong. There's something wrong. They make him feel sad. Because I was also thinking is he like a serial killer? Is this going to be his daughter's in danger and he has to use the paintings? I don't know. I took it wherever, but.
Do you want to know who I thought the boyfriend is going to cheat with? Somebody in a tennis outfit.
Yeah.
Because he keeps thinking about when that picture about not wanting her to have it, and it's bad that she has it. And that occurred to me why that's like what the girl would be wearing or something.
Okay, I hate her boyfriend, her fiance, because Edgar later kind of snoops through her purse, which I'm totally on board for because he's got to figure it out. And sees a note from this guy, Carson Jones, and he calls her like Pumpkin or Kiddo or something.
Pumpkin, and he calls himself Smiley. Yeah, which is a serial killer nickname.
And Edgar's like, maybe it's unfair that I didn't trust this guy because of this. It's like, nope, not unfair at all. And he doesn't swear.
Well, he's Baptist.
Terrifying.
Listeners,
if you haven't swore, say it with me. 3, 2, 1.
Baptist.
Shit.
Cock.
Oh, what?
What, Ben?
Does anybody remember the name of his stupid fucking Christian a cappella group? Because it's a pun. Yeah, that sucks. Yeah. That sucks.
Yeah.
What a dork.
Oh, anyway, so I kept expecting this to be like she's in danger, but I think it's just that she's going to get her heart broken, and that's like, that kind of thing happens. He later reflects on I think she's going to be okay because she's strong, she's tough like him.
It's hard to tell because we don't know how mean this book is yet.
That's very true.
Nothing particularly like the dog is pretty dark.
Oh, shush. I don't want to.
Yeah.
And Duma Key is not kind to daughters.
No, which we find out after Edgar and Ilsa explore the island a little bit more. We don't have to talk much about this. They see this woman who he jokingly refers to as the bride of
the Godfather. I thought that was a really funny bit.
Because she's dressed kind of like Marlon Brando in the scene where he dies in The Godfather.
Holding like a harpoon gun on her lap. Yeah. And she waves at them. She has huge shoes on her feet. But they're driving through. Elsie's driving. And all of a sudden, the things start to like feel weird and smell weird, and the sun isn't as bright. Like everything's kind of changing around them.
It's
And they're-
overgrown and like the terrain is terrible.
And the further out they get, they suddenly become violently sick.
Well, Ilse does.
Ilse does.
Edgar feels something. He kind of pretends he's not feeling good. She throws up all over the side of the car.
Yeah, she does.
And they have to turn back, and when they pass the house, the gates have been recently opened. Like they just went inside.
Like somebody
Kinda
knew
like
they
they-
knew.
Yeah, like they just came out to see them.
Yeah. So they get back to Big Pink, and Elsie just blames it on the egg salad sandwich she made. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm not feeling great either. Although he feels perfectly fine, and so fine, in fact, that he paints something while she's asleep and has no idea what he's done.
And it rules.
Also that he hides the photo, the paintings, for when she's there, because she obviously wants to see his art. And everybody keeps commenting on the giant conch shell one being eerie, but he hides the one of her boyfriend.
Yeah, this painting actually is the one of all of them that I'm like, oh, I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
The tennis dress
The
one?
tennis
Yeah,
dress?
Yeah.
that it's this.
Well, I see why Josh, you thought that was the affair, because he names it End of the Game. But
Right.
it says, Reba, the doll, wearing the tennis dress. So he's going to sleep with the doll at a tennis game.
That
person.
tracks. There's also something, and I don't know if this is, again, me trying to get ahead of the book, because we read Stephen King all the time. The color of the balls being
Is
the fact
off.
that it's not the right shade of green.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's going to be important or not.
Hmm.
I also think it's interesting that we come to find out later that when we talk about Reba and he has those like squeezing her and he's doing the I can do this. In my head, I kept thinking about a Raggedy Ann.
Me too. That's all that's what I picture.
But they keep correcting us by saying looks like Lucille Ball. And I think it's because later we find out that the Bride of the Godfather had a Raggedy Ann doll.
I was picturing that from the start, though.
I know, I think that's why
Yeah.
they keep saying it's different, is so that
so we don't-
you're
yeah.
not supposed to be picturing that, because it's supposed to be a jump from that.
Interesting. So she eventually goes back home. Edgar takes her to the airport, and when he gets home, he has a message on his answering machine. And it's from an old woman. We'll come to know her as Elizabeth. And she tells him, Josh, what you mentioned, that Duma Key, or maybe it was you, Ben, is not a lucky place for daughters.
Oh yeah, it's lucky the first time. It gets worse. Like every time she says it escalates, I think.
We jump back again to the little girl who is referring to herself as Libbet, who finally gets her hands on some drawing tools. And as she begins to draw, she starts to remember who she was.
Yeah.
Is this the part where does it say she calls herself Libbet?
Yeah, that's when she remembers her name.
Yeah, I missed that. I didn't realize that this little girl was Elizabeth until the next one.
Oh!
When it's like Elizabeth, like it specifically says her full name, and I'm like, whoa, what a twist. I'm slow.
It's quick. These are such short sections for the most part. You could miss it. Now we're at New Year's Day, and Edgar has been making his way further and further down the beach on his daily walks. And on this day, he comes close enough to holler at some guy that he's seen just chilling on the beach from time to time.
What a fucking meet cute.
It's
I
so
love
great.
this. The shouted conversation when he's like, just keep coming, I'll give you a ride. And he's like, no, I'll get there in time. Don't worry about it.
I like that.
Yeah.
I love this.
It's such a great start to this friendship.
Yeah, I love this because like Edgar on these walks, when he first started, they were a big deal. Like he had to count his steps. He had to break
It
his
was
walks into
painstaking.
17 steps at a time because he was in so much pain. And his daughter, when she was visiting, asked, like, why don't you get a golf cart? You can ride down and meet the neighbors. And he's like, nope, I have set a goal. I have a plan. I'm going to walk until I can walk there. And then even when he is within shouting distance of this dude, he's like, hey, neighbor, let's come have a chat. And he's like, in a week later.
It shows something interesting to us, I think, about pace of his life on Duma Key so far, that I think kind of puts you in a relaxed sort of frame of mind that I think is a really interesting way to make us feel like everything's just taking its time. There's no rush, there's no urgency, because we're in the part of the story where the story is just like building and unfolding in front of us.
And I think this makes Edgar and Wireman, once they do meet and become kind of like instant pals, I think that makes a lot of sense, because like just these two guys, I think if I were out on the kind of person that was hanging out on a beach at the same time every day, and I had this weird connection, it's so sincere and human that like once they do meet, they're like, they've had this time to be like, yeah, that's the guy.
They're comfortable with each other.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
I like it.
I do too.
I also, you realize later why when he says, I've got the gold, don't give me a ride, he accepts that because Wireman realizes how much autonomy is important right now with what he is seeing with Elizabeth.
He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
It's about here in the book where Edgar, we haven't really talked about it, but he's been having, he's phantom limb syndrome, I believe it's called. And he's just been having these strange experiences, and the consistency of feeling his missing arm, being connected to his artwork is kind of spooking him out a bit. So he takes to Google and he finds some interesting tales about people having lost limbs and have strange experiences. Did you guys have like a favorite? I liked this part. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, it's cool. It's like
unsolved mysteries type thing, like a 5-minute, like he lost his hand and he had it in a jar and it was in the cellar, and one winter his missing hand felt really cold and he had to move the jar next to the fireplace, and then his hand didn't tingle anymore. I love that crap.
I like the guy who used his phantom limb to Johnny Smith crimes.
Yeah.
He would touch stuff with his phantom limb and then automatically write, stuff that people couldn't know.
I was laughing at you because the important thing was that his hand was cold because it told him that the window was broken in his basement. That you were skipped over his answer was his hand was cold, so we just had to go put it by a fire, and that solved it.
That's it. Basically,
that was your takeaway.
It was cold because the window broke and it was cold down there. I'm always cold. I'm very in tune to
You're a
these
very
things.
cold person, yes.
This kind of leads him to decide, like, maybe I have powers.
It's so funny because he's just so open to it. He's just like, I have powers now, and I better tell everyone.
When you're in recovery, you do have, like, this openness and honesty about things, and I could see that not really having boundaries all the time.
I think he also likes to know he's not insane.
Yeah. I do like he seems really healthy considering what he's been through too. And I was worried like the anger piece was going to be more like a Jack Torrance recurring, like he had a permanent personality change, but it seems like this is more temporary, a side effect of what he's going through.
I mean, maybe.
There
are still times.
Yeah. I mean, he's still struggling. He's not far out from recovery by any means. But so he's like, okay, maybe I have strange powers and I need an experiment. And so that requires a conversation with Pam, which is where I started to be like,
is that a good idea?
Pam's hard to talk to.
Yeah, it is. Wait, see, this is, the point where I was like, I don't understand this relationship as much as I thought I did.
It's not what I expected, even given what we know.
Leading up to this, like
he painted a happy marriage.
Yes.
Yeah.
A happy marriage that fell apart for unfortunate, sad reasons that weren't ultimately anyone's fault.
That's not what their conversations reflect in any way.
There was an accident and she had reason to not want to be around him, as, it's complicated. Human beings and life is complicated. It's a really interesting. But when she gets on the phone, she's straight up like, she tells him, I wish you were dead.
She hates him.
Yeah.
And has no sympathy for him, doesn't care about.
It's fucking crazy because he's the reason that you get to live as a millionaire the rest of your life, lady. Calm down.
Well, I mean, I could see her hating him for a reason that we haven't been shown.
And that's,
Yeah.
it has to be that.
And so then it does kind of call into question his character and his reliability, telling us, because he really did. It kept, and I don't know if maybe
Well,
it's
that
just an
doesn't jive
effective
with how-
way though to show us without giving us a bunch of history that there is more to it, because when he paints
Maybe.
this idyllic picture, but then we, the reader, experience this really like unhappy situation, it's probably as jarring to us as it is to him.
Yeah, but I don't know that jibes with his relationship with his daughter, though.
Well,
If
he
he was like
doesn't
this
have a good relationship
massively-
with the other daughter. So
That's
maybe the daughters
true.
took sides.
Wow. I don't know.
Oh, you guys,
We
sorry.
don't know.
We're releasing Gotham lunch at the Gotham Cafe, and we just wrapped up A Good Marriage. So I really
You're deep
super
in
like
the
I just
relationship.
edited those. Yeah,
the
I'm
domestic
sorry. So I'm diving
drama.
a little too deep on that, but it's just interesting. Why did King write it this way? What's it trying to deliver to us?
That's why I thought the choking thing happened beforehand.
I get that. So-
We'll find out. We got a lot of fucking book to go. This is
Yeah.
like a kind of a long one, huh?
Yeah, it's so people, we asked on our socials what people ahead of us reading it, we asked what they thought about it, what their Chambray shirt rating, and any non-spoiler. And the most frequent used word was meandery. And yes, but I also think
I enjoy
that
it.
kind of
It serves the purpose of the story.
A little bit.
It seems like a tool.
We'll see if that changes.
Yeah.
But for right now, because I did feel like, man, nothing happened. And no, stuff happened. It just took a really long time to do short things.
It lends itself to this like tropical setting.
Yeah.
Everything is it's a very slow ghost story.
Yeah, but something's
no
wrong.
rush.
Like his paintings, he's painting these beautiful sunsets, but then he's incorporating an uncanny element into them.
I can't wait till we get to the art gallery. I want to talk about his art.
So we'll kind of jump ahead real quick. I just want to mention shortly after this, he talks Pam into sending him. He comes up with a weird excuse. He's like, "Hey, I've been painting, and I'll send you a picture of it. And I'm doing kind of a surrealist thing." He doesn't use that word yet, but he's like, "Can you send me your gardening gloves? I think they'd be really cool for this. If not, no big deal." And she's like, really mean about it, but like agrees. It's you can tell they're still dealing with each other because they are connected. And they have kids, but
Also, we should mention that her dad just died right before Christmas.
I forgot about that. That's true.
Because that is part of they earlier on, there is a plan to have the family together for Christmas that no one really wants to agree to, but
Except
they will.
Ilse.
Except for Ilse. And then Pam's dad gets sick. Pam's dad was never a fan of Edgar, so he's like, my appearance at his bedside, it's probably not who he wants. So I understand. I'll take a back seat, whatever. And so there has been that whole ordeal she was dealing with, living out there, taking care of him until he passed, and then has come back.
Yeah, that's a good point too. So that kind of explains some of her impatience
A little,
with him.
yeah.
She's kind of mean and cranky, but anyway, so shortly after this, he trips and he ends up breaking his fall with both arms.
Yeah, so cool. He trips and on the way down closes his eyes against the imminent fall and reaches out with both arms and it stops himself and he's like, "What the fuck?"
And he can feel like he bites his arm.
He can feel his flesh in his teeth.
Yeah, that's so crazy. The bite really got me.
His next painting, again, he's overwhelmed with this urge to paint, and he paints Friends with Benefits.
Alternate title, The Cuckening.
The cuckening. So when he paints this, he has the gloves. She did send them. And would one of you like to describe the painting?
I sure would.
It's pretty sexy.
Yeah. A painting I'd like to see. Honestly, the reason I would like to see this painting, not because it sounds like his wife has nice titties, but because there's a nice rose on them.
Because how surprising Tom is
Or
in it.
because, and that there's a man in a window looking sad.
I wasn't picturing Tom as like the big dicked stud of this
No.
painting.
It's the... God damn it. I got so into my bit that I
sorry.
forgot my point. It is Pam on a bed. She has her bra in her lap. She has a rose tattoo above her breast.
I like the rose touch. I feel like it's Dark Tower.
Yeah, it is nice, yeah. And Tom, his childhood friend and accountant, shirtless. And then Mark, the guy from California that she was sleeping with.
Max, I think.
Max,
right?
yeah.
That Ilse told him about.
Yeah. Peeking in the, like,
Looking
through sad
Yeah.
through the window.
Like, who's that guy?
But I do like that after this, he's like, ask stupid questions, get stupid fucking answers. Got it. Yeah.
Look not through a keyhole,
Yeah.
lest you be vexed. I love grown up with that saying too. And it's like, yeah, you don't want to find stuff that'll make you sad. Don't look for it.
Yeah, he immediately is mad at himself. He's like, experiment my ass. Fucking goddamn it.
Yeah.
Oh, the reason I wanted to see the painting. Sorry, I got so distracted. The reason I want to see this painting is because it talks about how bad he is at painting people necessarily. And so that so many of these lines are shadows or hard strokes that he knows what they are because
they're
he
like
painted them.
slashes almost.
Yeah.
They're rough.
And I would really like to see this because I bet it looks
Really cool.
really abstract.
Yeah.
Not like super abstract, but abstract enough outside, not knowing what it is. That's cool.
We should look. I bet there's.
I hope somebody's done
Someone's
these.
painted
Yeah.
these.
Well, if we get a cool like gift edition or artist edition.
Maybe,
with artwork.
yeah. Ooh.
All right. It is time, muchachos. What?
I love it when you call us muchachos.
Yeah.
I thought you would. I got it from my friend and Edgar's, Jerome Wireman. So we finally get to meet Jerome.
Wireman fucking rules. I thought I was going to hate him. I thought he was going to be a catchphrase spouting, know-it-all. Who was the guy in the stand that I hate?
Yeah, the professor guy.
Yeah, the professor
Yeah.
guy. For all the reasons I hated him, I thought I was going to hate Wireman. I fucking love Wireman. He rules.
I like that he's just a nerd that spouts out like movie trivia. Like he will make quotes and then attribute those quotes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Let's talk about this meet cute. Oh, wait, Jerome Wireman is the caretaker of Elizabeth Eastlake. She's the old lady in Libet. So meet cute. Take us through it.
He finally walks up the beach and gets called over, and they sit down and are having a nice conversation when Edgar mentions, she asks about Elizabeth, and without thinking calls her the wife of the Godfather. A middling joke at best, but being a King novel, it is the funniest fucking thing Wireman has ever heard.
It breaks a chair.
And he laughs so hard that he breaks his chair, and Edgar almost passes out. He's laughing so hard.
And the lemonade
now they're best
glass.
friends.
There is a bit of like surreal comedy that comes that something that is just so surprising that it happens that it adds exponential comedy to it.
Yeah, he knocks his glass of lemonade onto the beach and it just lands perfectly upright and they lose their shit all over. It's like they've got the giggles and now anything that happens.
It's like
will
those
be
videos
funny.
of when you saw kids flip the water bottle
Yup.
and it land out and the whole room
Yeah,
go
yeah.
insane. It was that.
Yeah.
But two old men on a beach.
So they have a nice conversation. We find out a little bit more about Elizabeth's background here. You know, she has Alzheimer's, we know. And so it's interesting because we're only meeting her with memory issues, with that kind of brain trauma.
Also, we should point out that the reason he's laughing his ass off is because it's kind of right.
Oh, yeah.
They'd be her
There's
referring to her. It's more like the daughter of the Godfather is the more accurate version.
Because her father was a land baron and a skin diver.
Ooh.
Whatever the fuck that
I
means.
was going to Google it, and I've decided not to. I've decided to find out when the book tells me.
The things that we have Googled, though, I'm disappointed.
One last thing. At some point around here, Edgar thinks that Wireman is a big fellow, but he's fit. I think that's important. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Don't worry.
I
It's
don't know
important
if
for
you're-
my enjoyment.
Oh, okay.
Ben's
That's
crush
just
on
for Ben.
Wireman's really coming out this episode.
Yeah. I bet you liked the scene on the way back from... Anyway. We'll get there, listeners.
What an unnecessary misdirect in that scene.
I have a comment. Okay. When Edgar gets back to his place after having this lovely excursion, he has a message from Jack. Edgar had asked him once. Ilse was like, "Dad, like this is like you're really good. You need to talk to a gallery owner, an art curator, see if there's anything in this." And just he loves her so much. Like Pam at one point is like, "Oh my God, you do anything for her," and she's so snotty about it. That's what makes me kind of not like her. It's like that is your daughter too, lady.
Right. Yeah.
And come to find out, Jack, who I also like, we didn't really talk about him.
Yeah,
he seems
chill.
really sweet.
Yeah.
He's just kind of there, though.
Yeah. His mom works for or did work for one. So he's arranged for Edgar's work to be looked at, which makes him feel instantly sick to his stomach. There's this urge in him to keep his art to himself, at least on the property, because he does share like pictures and he'll show people. And
he's a little worried that it's just fucking basic because it's just a sunset at the end of the day with something strange or surreal. To him, that's what he thinks people are going to read them as.
But there's like there's a strange feeling beyond that he can't quite identify to. So it's like normal stuff, but also something outside of him, it seems like. I could be reading way too much into it. But then we get a jump scare if this were a movie.
Wasn't fucking expecting this. We have these psychic readings that are coming out in drawings. I wasn't expecting future ghost jump scare premonition. It's on his staircase, right? He turns around and on his stairs is Tom in pajama pants, shirtless, and a hole through his eye. Clearly shot himself through the eye. And he's like, instantly he's like, I know he committed suicide. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
He calls him and gets the machine. And basically, in this recording that Tom leaves, he lets anybody who wants to break into his house and steal his shit know now is the time.
Yeah.
He's on a cruise with his mom and brother. And it's a very chipper, happy message.
Oh, also that the brother, we find out Pam's a bigot.
Oh, yeah, that's right, too. She calls him.
Oh,
Yeah. And Edgar thinks that his assumptions that the house is amplifying something inside of him, there must be something to that. And his vision of Tom was a warning of what's to come. And he thinks he just feels so true to him that he reaches out to Wireman, of all people, the guy he just met, for some advice.
And he's like, look, I have powers.
And Wireman's like, yup.
Yeah. I know. Which at first seems so insane. And then by the end of this reading, you're like, oh, that's why he was so chill.
Yeah, I know. It's really, although he seems chill, like in not a way that you question.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I don't know if I'd be that chill, but he's just a chill guy.
Mm-hmm.
What an interesting a personality trait of somebody who is kind of a casual know-it-all, also having that sort of ability to be very understated.
Yeah. I didn't think about that. That's cool. So yeah, Josh, as you said, he tells Wireman everything, including the cryptic message that Elizabeth left for him about the place not being friendly or lucky for daughters. And interestingly, Wireman has a pretty reasonable explanation. Sounds pretty plausible for why she would have said that, even though she said it in a super creepy, cryptic way.
Yeah, she had a number of sisters, and several of them had died on the island.
Mm-hmm.
We assume that they drowned, but we do not know much more beyond that.
The twins were never found.
Which is a interesting, you just saying that out loud makes me, we haven't talked about this because there's a lot to talk about, but makes me think of, he often describes the way the shells sound when it sounds like skeletons walking.
The grinding bones.
Yeah, like up the beach from the water.
I love that.
Oh,
So I don't know, maybe again, I'm reading too much into it, but Wireman does, though, honor his request for advice, and he gives him some advice about what he can do to help Tom.
It's the only thing he can do. Call Pam. If he won't talk to you, if you don't think he'd listen to you, somebody that he'll listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least someone that he listened to once.
Yep. He also notices that strange scar on Wireman's head at this point, which we get to in a little bit. He invites Edgar inside to finally meet the lady of the house, who this fucks me up. She has these china figures that she spends a lot of time arranging, and it's creepy.
Yeah.
I don't like dolls. Figures. She finds out that Edgar is an artist, and she asks for a piece because she gets one from every artist who's lived in Big Pink.
Including Salvador Dali.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy. And I love that the second she mentions it, he's like, but I can see it, right? And he's not an art guy, but he's like, I get a chance to see a Dali sketch. Yeah.
When I first heard that, because I had listened to it, the audiobook is great, by the way. The narrator
really
has
is.
a great voice for
John
Edgar.
Slattery, I believe.
Yeah. When she said Dolly, I was probably doing something and I just heard the word Dolly, and I thought it was a painting of his Dolly.
Oh.
His doll. His anger doll.
Yeah, because he keeps saying "Hello, Dolly,"
Yeah.
and I am listening to the audiobook too, and I'm like, yeah, he has a doll. What? It took me a couple times of him saying that to be like, oh right, they're spelling it wrong.
Yeah, me too. Oops. That's the thing about an audiobook and translating the written word. It's fun. So anyway, she has these figures, and those are going to come into play in a way that I still don't understand.
I can't wait to find. Oh no.
Oh no.
I think I just thought I'm not going to share this idea yet. I'm going to share it
No?
next episode
Okay.
about the China figures and what happens to them.
Okay, you can share it now.
Is there a chance that she saw her sisters get pushed into the water?
And she's reenacting that by
Yeah.
putting. Oh, because we find out
By
later
wrapping
one of her things
figurines
that she'll get like really upset
because
about.
they-
You have to do. Yeah, she puts her figurines in like a cloth and puts them in a tin and makes Wireman toss them in the pond. But then she wants them later, so he always pretends to by throwing a rock in instead.
And it does not ever explicitly say this, but the way she reacts to it gave me the "it won't stop screaming" kind of vibe. And you know what else doesn't stop screaming? Children. Sometimes.
Okay, so I don't know. I like that. We don't
I'm
end
going
this
dark.
knowing
Yeah, I remember
anything
it's
about
so
it.
dark.
So they eventually, they chat and it's cute, and he likes her, like you like her too, I feel like. And they go into the TV room to watch Oprah together.
The way she springs the poetry thing on him was fucking great.
That was really sweet.
It's really endearing.
I own that book.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, good poems arranged by Garrison Keillor. It sucks.
But the moment's really cute. She's talking to Edgar and says, basically, Wireman said you'd read me some poetry. And in his head, he's like, he warned me her memory issues. I know that if I look to him, she will read on my face that this is the first I'm hearing of it.
She'll be embarrassed.
I'm just going to say yes and.
Yeah. And he does.
And he does.
And I love that.
The way
'cause he
you
doesn't,
have to work with Alzheimer's
Yeah,
patients.
he doesn't want her to be embarrassed.
Yep.
And he's willing to do it. So, and Wireman apologizes after. He's like, I was going to ask you. I didn't get the chance. I'm so sorry. And he's like, not a big deal. We pop back to child Elizabeth, who's developed more in her art, her family. She talks about how at first her family really loved her work. They eventually start to get bored of it. And she enters her surrealism phase, where we get this lovely bit of delicious foreshadowing. Something evil at that point starts to slip into her work, and she starts to draw her doll, Novine. And then the doll starts to talk, which was cool at first, but then it changed. And I think at this point I was like, what is this book? I'm on board. Yes. I have no idea what to, whatever idea I thought I had about what this was isn't, and I just can't wait.
This is the point that I was like, oh yeah, there's something exciting coming, because the parallel of her doll and his Reba, and that this ominous painting of Reba in the tennis dress. You're like, what the fuck does this all mean? How is it all going to come together? It's exciting.
Fucking sight.
When we come back to Edgar, we get another conversation between him and Pam, which just, again, every time they talk, I'm so on edge for their conversation. It just hurts when they talk to each other. What did you guys think of how he goes about explaining what he wants from Pam?
Have either of you ever caught someone exposed that knowledge that you have, blindsided them with it, something they thought was a secret?
I never know anything, so probably not.
I always know too much.
The burden of knowledge.
It's terrible.
Because there is essentially, he's trying to be very talking around, hey, I'm worried about Tom. I can't reach out. And she's like, why would you think I would even be in contact? And he's like,
he doesn't want to have to say it because it's not about that.
I know you fucked. I know you have a more intimate relationship. And she's all she cares about is how he knows.
She blames it all on Ilsa.
And it doesn't matter what the purpose of this call is, which is just call him and say, he's planning on killing himself when he gets back from this cruise, and say that you'll make sure his brother and mom know that it was a suicide.
Yeah, you'll tell everybody he committed suicide.
Yeah, he adds that as almost an afterword because he knows how that got through to him.
Because that would ruin his plan, so he's hoping that that's enough to stop him from going through with it and maybe save his life. He's not upset about the relationship, and she's like, it's none of your business.
For a while.
And he's like, you're right. Just a guy's gonna kill himself. Please do something.
Well, and she's also not interested because she broke it off with him because he's too emotional, which is interesting.
When she is about to make a comment about him not taking his meds, and then it clicks for her. It's a really cool moment.
Yeah.
Edgar's trying to tell her in a very gentle way,
very diplomatic way.
Hey, you have power here to maybe help him. And she's like, what the fuck do I care what he does? He's like, well, maybe you don't care about Tom's life or death either way, but I'm sure you do care about people knowing that you're not a heartless piece of shit. And also, maybe it won't affect you for very long, but you're going to have a rough year or two. And I love the part, he's like, there was a steel in her that wasn't there before, and it was my part of the accident that she got. That's so intimate and cool.
Yeah. The way that even though he doesn't remember that, he knows it about
He sees
her.
that she's changed, which maybe also kind of gives us a better idea of why she's so hard with him. So the next day, or I don't know if it's the next day, some amount of time passes, and Wireman comes over because Edgar wants him to look at his work because he's so freaking nervous about this. And he's like, just like Ilse, he's like, this is awesome. And while he's, looking at this and explaining to Edgar, hey, you should go through with this, have somebody look at it, these are really good, he gets this overwhelming urge to paint Wireman and paint a bowl of fruit and a gun.
The back and forth of fruit, gun. That was very fucking cool.
And we learn something about Wireman here.
Essentially, we find out that, don't know the backstory to this, but Wireman sat down at a table with a gun, closed his eyes, and grabbed from this bowl of fruit, either an orange or an apple. And if it was an apple, he would shoot himself and grab an apple.
I hate apples. I get it.
It's a dramatic way to just don't put apples in.
Yeah, you don't ever have to shoot yourself.
Basket. Yeah.
We're not trying to diminish the seriousness of suicide.
But also don't keep apples in your house.
Yeah, it's not safe. Jeez.
And then he shares.
No apples a day keeps the coroner away. Anyway, so sorry. That was a full minute after
It's worth it.
it was anything.
The conversation essentially goes to Wireman having a bit of psychic power. He has a bit of the shine.
Yeah, because he's like, you can.
Yeah,
And
he's like, what?
He's like, paint me
Paint me
in
like
my
one of your
bowl of
French
fruit.
girls. Yeah.
Oh, yours was better. Damn it. He asks him what happened to him, and Wireman's still not ready to get into that muchacho. I have to say that every once in a while because he does, and it's charming.
Again, I thought I'd hate it.
I don't.
I like it.
That night during a thunderstorm, Edgar makes a really sad piece of art, and it is the scene of Wireman trying to take his life. And we find out that he's there without his wife and child. So something happened there, which we're going to get to before we wrap up this episode. And the next day we get our trip to the art gallery. It is Jack driving him, Wireman and Edgar, and they're about to meet a guy whose name I wrote down
Nanuzzi?
somewhere. Nanuzzi, yes.
This
Dario
scene,
Nanuzzi.
We haven't talked a ton. We've kind of like briefly described what his paintings are, like the ones that he's going to show. Because he doesn't bring any of the like spooky paintings, right?
No, some of the the ones that were like this, he doesn't bring any of the sketches.
Yeah.
It's only things he's done since he started painting.
And his series is basically he paints the sunset and then adds a random item just like superimposed over it.
Yeah.
Fine. And he's so scared that not that this guy will say he has no talent, but that he will say he has a little talent, and that he should take all of his stuff down to the boardwalk and sell it to tourists. I like surrealist painting. It's just, did anybody else get the feeling like King's going way out of his way to be like, trust me, these paintings are really good. You guys, I know it's all up. Just trust me. This guy is like, wow, these are nothing like Dolly. Only an idiot would think these are. Now, the way they're described, it should really be more like, no, these are a lot like Rene Magritte paintings, but I don't know. It's just, it's very funny to me.
I think you're right. I think you're finding humor in how King is showing us, which I love. Yeah, I think that's
it works
absolutely.
For me. I like it, and I do think these paintings.
We can't really. It's hard to picture. So he's like, yeah, it's good though.
I think he's as baffled as us. And the way people react to the paintings.
Yeah, they try to buy some guy. Oh,
that
man,
was fucking
I
great.
know it's shitty, and this guy's not classy at all. But if that was like a rare book, I'd also be like, by the way, like I'll buy it from right now. Like right now, we don't have to go through this guy. Yeah, I'll give you more than Rustlers.
But long story short, he shows him, this guy's like, yeah, these are really good. He teaches him how to seal the paintings because he doesn't even know how to like.
I also didn't know that.
I feel like I should have. He's like a legit, like, hey, well, if you want to have a show, we can do that. And Wireman's a lawyer. I don't think we mentioned that.
Yeah.
In his other life. Yeah. Oh, that's where the other life comes from. Because we get my friend Wireman before we meet before he meets Wireman.
Before we meet Wireman.
And a lot of, I will always remember this about Wireman.
Oh, no. Shh. We don't want to. Okay.
Not so delicious, that foreshadowing now, is it?
Why was that so dramatic?
That was,
jeez.
That was a little much.
Yeah.
Because you were excited about the foreshadowing earlier, and now foreshadowing made you sad.
Why are you so happy about that, though?
Big Pink's getting to me.
Yeah. Well, Big Pink's getting to everybody because, oh man, I was trying to tie that into the back of the van. I imagine.
You nailed it.
Okay, I don't know if it's a van, but in my brain, when it became sexual, even though it wasn't actually sexual, there's suddenly in this like unmarked big black van when you can't see inside, and Wireman's in the back just jerking it. How can someone else explain what's actually happening, please?
You just did.
Okay.
Yeah. No, Edgar, they're driving back in the van, and suddenly there's a movement in the back of the van, and Edgar's first thought is, why is Wireman
why
just...
would you think that about your friend?
Yeah, why is Wireman just jerking it just right in the back seat? But he turns around and he's not jerking it just right.
Would you turn around?
He is... I gotta see this.
Hey, man, you
would I turn around?
Well, okay, not... Hey. The royal you.
Okay.
I think it's etiquette to let them know they've been caught.
He's not jerking off.
What is actually happening is not funny at all. He is having a seizure in the back seat. And immediately Edgar is freaked out. Obviously, he's like, oh my God, my friend is
dying. He wants him to go to a doctor like right
immediately. Now. But when Wireman comes out of it, he's just like, okay, we're going to go right over here.
Yeah.
And doesn't even act like he noticed anything happened.
Yeah.
Because it happens while they're waiting for him to bring the van around the first time, where one eye goes up, one eye goes down.
And it waters.
And he almost falls almost trips over nothing, basically. So this is kind of ramped up.
Yeah.
Which also gives less credence to him thinking he's jerking it, because he saw have a seizure earlier. Anyway, he's just in denial. I guess I'd rather Wireman be getting all big juicy in the back of the van instead of having a seizure. So he tries to convince him to see a doctor, and he's like, yeah, I'll do that. Not right now, though. And not probably tomorrow or for the next few months. Yeah.
The rest of the time is so quiet around here. This is the one time where the snowbirds come down.
He's not going to have time.
The houses are rented out, so he's busy.
Once they get home from this trip, Edgar has a very lengthy message from Elizabeth.
It says I have one message and my mailbox is full, which means this one message is the 5-minute tape. Also, 5-minute tape on your answering machine. Ooh. How does that sentence feel to hear?
What do those words mean?
But yeah, it's a 5-minute message from Elizabeth.
When was this book written? I just realized that.
I think it was early 2000s.
At one point, Wireman
mid-2000s.
complains about that they're installing Wi-Fi, and he
Yeah.
doesn't even know what the hell that is.
He doesn't know. But yeah, it ends. The voicemail ends with her mentioning the table is leaking, and that what is it? And my father is a skin diver.
The last 6 words on the tape. After a long pause, that he almost stops the tape, and then just in this deadpan voice, my father was a skin diver, and then it ends, and that's so scary.
More importantly, though, the 2008, by the way. More importantly, she tells him that he should try, if he has an opportunity, he should do an art show because he shouldn't keep his work on the island if he can help it.
Don't hoard the art.
And we kind of get to what that might be about when we wrap up the chapter 8, which is what we're at now, where that's the last thing we're covering today. But we open it with the ever tense Pam Edgar telephone conversation, because she actually did confront Tom, and she's calling to tell Edgar how that went.
Yeah, fuck you for being right. That's essentially what her attitude is.
Yeah, Tom got very angry and...
it was a hard deal. She called him, had him come over. When she opened the door, he thought it was a reconciliation thing. He kissed her. She let him. And she says that and then waits for indignation. And then when there is none, she moves on. And it was but then when he tried more, I realized what this was going for. And we didn't even make it into the kitchen to have coffee. We had it out in the hallway. And he called me a meddlesome cunt. And I was like, yeah, man, he knows you.
Yeah. And the problem is she's still fixated through this whole thing on how he found out. And again, is blaming his favorite daughter. So, and he comments about this later, like he needs to do something about this because Pam's going to rock Ilsa's world if she continues to think that she did this, and kind of paints an interesting picture of Pam in that regard too, I think.
Does Pam know about her engagement yet?
No,
because she's still hiding it because she's only 19?
Yeah. She just wanted to tell her dad, and yeah.
They're gonna after he gets done with this tour, I think is when they're gonna tell his mom or her mom.
So Edgar needs a palate cleanser, and he goes to visit Wireman and again harass him about the doctor, and he asks about Elizabeth, and he's like, today is the worst day I've ever seen her have, and follows that crap up immediately with, so could you be alone with her for a while? And he has a good reason.
Take a shift?
Yeah, there's some stuff going on at one of the properties, and the person fixing it needs him to be there to show him something. And Edgar's very absolutely, man. I love that old lady. Let's do it. And so they spend the afternoon together. And during that time, Elizabeth makes her strange China doll request.
Wireman walked him through so he'd be prepared if it happened.
She gives him a figure wrapped in a cloth that she put in a cookie tin and says, toss this fucker in the pond. Because she's very vulgar in this moment. She's just having not herself.
Like Vera in Dolores Claiborne, where they're just uncontrollably vulgar.
You know, this kind of gives me a little bit of Dolores Claiborne vibes too.
Yeah.
And so he goes out to the pond and he throws a rock in because that's important because she'll hear it.
Fucking smart. Because when earlier it mentions Wireman having to fish figurines out of the pond as part of his almost sometimes daily routine. And the commitment to you have to throw it because she's old as hell, but her ears are so good she will know. And then that reveal when he's like, I still have it. I just threw a rock. I was like, tell Wireman. That's going to save him so much time.
Told him that. I thought he eventually figured it out through trial and error.
I love that creative solution. As someone that worked in an Alzheimer's ward for half a year, you got to think creatively.
Yeah.
Something really upsetting happens right after this, though. He takes the figure out and he sees that its face is chipped away. Why? Dolls are bad enough, but when they don't have all of their face, it's just
things without faces.
It's a hat on a hat of upsetting. He spends the rest of the afternoon with Elizabeth.
He draws. This is when he searches for amongst her figures for the right one, which one is going to be, because the way he needs to prove it to Pam is Wireman essentially says you have to
make her believe
it
psychic.
He tells her, he gives her the answer. He tells her how he knew, and she doesn't believe it.
Gets real worried for
she's
the
like,
first time.
Can you need to call doctor?
Yeah,
your doctor.
And so he doesn't have something of hers. He never saw those gloves again, and he finds a China doll that will be the facsimile for her and uses that to draw an image. And it is of her in a rocking chair, like, look, her hair's down. She has a book. There's some other details that are, it's just like a very captured moment in time.
Yeah, he does another experiment, even though he said he wouldn't. And so before he leaves for the day, she tells him to go upstairs and he'll find it. He doesn't know what it is, and she doesn't explain. We don't know. And when he gets up there, he finds a family portrait. He sees dad, sisters, Elizabeth, and her dad is holding a skin diver's mask.
We're going to have to eventually know what that
Why
looks
is it?
like.
Why? Yeah. I like a scuba diver.
I believe that's what it is.
We'll look it up.
Skin divers, if I recall, are. Do you watch Survivor?
No.
Oh, I think that's like when they do like the harpoon, like just the.
Oh, they're not going in like
goggles.
scuba gear.
Yeah, you're just.
It's their skin diving into the ocean. Oh, makes so much sense. I don't know why I said it like
we're linguists.
It's a creepy phrase.
It's horrible,
especially combined with
it's like metal as fuck.
Yeah, it is. Combined with Elizabeth's repeated mumbling about the big boy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The big boy is coming. Watch out. That cocksucker could be anywhere, or whatever she says.
Yeah. And it's like, is this her just lost in something in her head? Or, well, probably not, because we're on Duma Key. And that's where we leave things with a very creepy afternoon with Elizabeth and Edgar.
That's it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us for our next episode, where we will be covering through Chapter 13. For Benjamin Graham and CM Alexander, I'm Joshua Kahn reminding you, pictures are magic, as you know.
Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to Duma Key Part 1. We hope you enjoyed it. I have an outtake to share with you, but first I'm going to paint you a word picture about how you can stay in touch with us. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Derry Public Radio and X at Derry Public. You can email us anytime at derrypublicradio@gmail.com and also chat with us about all kinds of fun stuff on our Discord. The link for that is in the show notes. And finally, visit etsy.com/derrypublicradio for all kinds of fun merchandise. In fact, I just added some pillows, tote bags, and long sleeve shirts for you specifically. You. And don't forget to check out our bonus episodes on patreon.com/derrypublicradio. We put a lot of hard work into our bonus content, and at the $5 and up tier, you get access to everything we've ever released on Patreon. You can sign up for an annual membership and save a little bit of money. And if you feel super wild about it, you can pick our next book at the $50 and up tier. That's hours and hours of content covering the King book you most want to hear for only $50. Wait a minute. We should really move that to a different tier. All right, you better get over there and lock in your book now before we realize our worth. In all seriousness, though, our Patreon is for you as a thank you for your support. Enjoy this outtake.
Welcome back to Jerry. Jesus Christ.
Oh, the sequel.
Jerry.
Welcome back to Jerry. Jerry and Derek, best friends forever.
I realized that I forgot.
You paused
Hold
for
on.
so long before you even started.
Because-
I was sure you had it.
So here's
What were you doing? That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.